Sometimes you wanna give up, 'cause you're tired and fed up, but joy comes in time. Don't get weary, you gotta endure, 'cause one day you'll suffer no more. Just hold on to where you're standing. Let him give you peace. Let his wisdom give you guidance. Give all your worries to him. I'm trying to tell you, 'cause I've been there, and by his grace I'm still here. 'Cause you got to hold on. Don't you get weak, you can hold on. Don't you give up, be strong. You don't have to cry, hold on. We can make it.
I know that the fire can get deep, and it can seem like every part of you is weak, but that's when he is strong. Just know it won't be long. Don't be hasty, it's a marathon.
Just hold on to where you're standing.
Let him give you peace.
Let his wisdom give you guidance.
Give all your worries to him. Don't get weary, 'cause I've been there, and by his grace I'm still here. 'Cause you got to
Hold on,
don't you get weak, you can
hold on.
You're gonna make it.
Be strong.
You don't have to cry.
Hold on. We can make it. Hold on. Hold on. Be strong. Hold on. Hold on. Be strong. Yeah. 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 'Cause he said in his word, hold on. Cast your cares upon him. Hold on. Hold on. Be strong. We can make it. Hold on. Hold on. You can make it. Hold on. Gotta believe it. Be strong. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. Just hold on. Hold on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hold on. Yeah. Be strong. We can make it. I just gotta let you know that you've been so good to me. And I know that I can't do it by myself. I need your love so desperately. It's been times I wanted to give up, but your words, they spoke to me. Fill my spirit, help me to believe, but sometimes I still get weak.
I need you to fill me up, fill me up, until I overflow. The keeper of my way. I need you to fill me up, fill me up. I need your love always, so I won't go astray. The keeper of my way. I know you know my thoughts. I know you know my flaws. Your love fills up every empty part of me that was hiding for so long. The love of my life, now I've evolved. I wanna be what you want, and by your strength I'll break
All right, Shalom, Shalom. This is your brother, YATHRAWAN.
And I'm Ra'aya.
And today we're going to go over a little bit of the Israelites in Europe, during the Dark Ages. You understand? They go by many names, Moors, sometimes will be referred to as Jews. But even then, this is that period of time where, you got even Jewish people starting to pertain to that name, as in Jewish, they pertain to that. But we're going to go over our presence in Europe during the Dark Ages. So the Dark Ages is otherwise known as the Middle Ages, and that's going to be from the fall of Rome up until the Renaissance period. We're talking about a 1,000-year period, give or take. Some people put it around 200 AD, some people started at 500 AD, and some people have it ending with the fall of Constantinople, which is the capital of the Byzantine Empire, and that's 1453. Some people have it extending further up until the Renaissance period really takes off, which is the 1600s, right? So that's what we're talking about the year 500 AD to about the 1500 ADs, all right? So let's start off with some scriptures, all right, just to get our mind frame right. Let's get 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 48. So one thing about this is a 1,000-year period of history. Now, what people try and do with the Dark Ages is they try and cover it up. They try and whitewash it. They try and pretend like there's no information about it. They, a number of things instead of actually, revealing what's going on. Not when I was in school, I didn't learn really anything about the Dark Ages besides a couple key events. But even something like the rise of Islam, I didn't even know about. But all these things are going on in the world that are important to keep in context because it'll just show you how connected the world was. Because what society will have you thinking was like, man, we are black people, we were slaves, and we came from poor, dirty Africa. And that's really all we understand. When in reality, for thousands of years, we've been contributing to science, arts, culture across the entire world since the dawn of time. So go ahead and read that out.
1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 48. And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images.
So 1 Maccabees tells the story of how the Maccabees escaped Greek captivity, how God delivered them back to their own nation, their own sovereignty, and how the Maccabees fought for it from the Greeks, right? Who was the Greek that originally took our land and the land of the known world at the time, so to speak? It was Alexander the Greek, or the Great, as he may be known. Now, what happened was, what it's saying here is that the heathen sought to take our scriptures and paint their images over our images, literally whitewashing. You understand? So that's a rule throughout history. You want to know who Esau is? Look who everybody is, right? Who's the Egyptians? White people. Who's the Native Americans? White people. Who's that people over there? Who's the real Jews? Quote unquote white people. So that's the whitewashing we're talking about. Throughout history, anytime they conquer something, they got to become that. They got to become that. And it's even so crazy when Alexander took over, one of the first places he took over, he went past Jerusalem and he went on down to Egypt. When he conquered Egypt, guess what? They crowned him Pharaoh. And he really bought into that. He was like, yeah, I guess I am Pharaoh. But you have a thing where now, once his empire falls, you've got all this migration of culture and people. And guess what? The ruling power in that land was now the white Greeks. So that's how the Egyptians changed over time. And then the whites continued to whitewash that history and portray themselves there. So that's a rule for then, and it continues to be a rule for now, even in going into about 500 AD with the Dark Ages. Because what happens is it's like this back and forth thing where we're in power, we mess up with our God, and then they come into power, and then they try and erase everything. You understand? There was a period where we were doing real well, but with the fall of the Roman Empire, well, let's actually get something else here. Let's get these scriptures first before I get into everything. Go ahead and get Psalms 83, just so we can get these scriptures together. But that's what I want you to understand first and foremost, that throughout history, there is a constant whitewashing, a constant changing of the narrative. All right?
Start at.
Start at verse 1.
Psalms chapter 83, verse 1. Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head.
So God has enemies. God has enemies. God has people, earthly beings that hate him. All right? And you got David writing a letter or a psalm to God, basically, and he's like, listen, God, the people that hate you, they're conspiring. They're trying, don't forget about it, keep reading.
Verse 3, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones.
So the enemies of God have aligned themselves together in these secret councils to consult against the children of God. Because that's how you make yourself an enemy of God. You attack his kids. All right? You can't box with God. You can't punch him. But you could beat up on his kids. So that's what they do. And that's what they're doing, taking crafty counsel against multiple different nations together against the children of Israel. Keep reading.
Verse 4, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance.
And we know this was fulfilled in the curses. This is one of the curses, that our name would be cut off. Jeremiah 17:4 says we would lose our heritage. And guess what? It was at the hands of another group of people. How? Think about this. These people, these other nations conspired together, allied themselves together in secret councils to erase our memory from the history books, right? But now it leaves gaps to fill. It leaves space for them to fill in. Well, we got a white out. we got a white out. We whited their name out, but there's space. Who wants to fill it in there? And we can see, it's no secret, that the white man, everywhere he can, he fills himself in. I was over here. I was over there. I was doing that. Of course I was Pharaoh. Of course I'm the Jews. Of course, and that's what happens. And that's how you even know that they're not the people of God, because their name is boldly throughout the earth that they were everything. So let's drop down to verse 12.
Verse 12, who said, let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. Continue.
Oh, that's it. So they said that they were going to take the houses of God in possession. Not just one, but as many as they could take. Not just Jerusalem, but wherever where we resided and tried to build something up. We had kingdoms in Africa. We had kingdoms in Asia. We had kingdoms in America. But all of them were conquered. They got it. They want everything that we have. Everything that we go build up from the ground up and make great, they swoop in, take it, and then pretend to be great. You understand? Let's get Genesis 1:27, all right? Because this lesson is basically about images, right? They're painting over our images. You understand? But where does our image come from?
Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them.
You see that? The children of God, both male and female, are literally in his image. God made a people like unto himself. What is that? Holy. A holy nation. That's his image. And that's what the heathen, the enemies of God, seek to always profane. Whenever we try and start doing right, they try and take us down. The constant struggle throughout history. Go to Daniel 7 and 9, all right? Because you can still, because first place, we got to reverse the whitewashing is right here in our own scriptures. You understand? Because it says they opened the book of the law and painted their images. But let's see what images we do have.
Daniel chapter 7, verse 9. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit.
The Ancient of Days, the Most High God, sitting on his throne. Keep reading.
Whose garment was white as snow.
His garment was white as snow. It was pure, holy. Go ahead.
And the hair of his head like the pure wool.
Hold on. The hair of his head like the pure wool. You know who has woolly hair? That brother. This brother right here. He got the, you showing the image of God, my brother. That's what it's saying. And we can't, you call me crazy right now because it's still hard to believe. But you got to imagine a time where we were walking around with our chest out like, I am the chosen though. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Respect that off top, you know? That's the mental conditioning that we're under, that we got to first reverse. Let's go. Was that it?
No, not yet. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire.
Con. Let's get Revelations chapter 4 and 3, all right? Because it says we're made in God's image. You understand? His physical and spiritual image, in a sense, right? We have his essence, his characteristics, his Holy Spirit, if we allow it to dwell in us, right?
Revelations chapter 4, verse 3. And he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone.
Man. So the Ancient of Days, right here again in Revelations 4 and 3, the Most High God sitting on the throne. He looked like a jasper and a sardine stone. What do those stones look like? They're precious gems. But when you look them up, they look brown. Shiny, well moisturized brown. You know what I mean? Ruddy almost. That reddish, deep brown. So it's like, man, the Ancient of Days, the Most High God, is described visually as having a white garment. So we know we're talking physical. And with brown skin and woolly hair, come on, man. Come on. Let's get his son real quick. Go to Revelations chapter 1, verse 13. You know, because his son is made in his image. You understand?
Revelations chapter 1, verse 13. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle.
So it's talking about his literal clothing. And the reason I got to point that out is because people want to discredit this. They want to get spiritual, say, oh, these colors, they represent something. It's talking about his clothing right here, and it's going to talk about his skin next. So,
verse 14, his head and his hairs were white like wool.
His head and his hairs were white like wool. He's made in the image of his Father, hair like wool, just as him. Keep going.
As white as snow, and his eyes were as flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace.
You see, they almost got you with that fine brass. Brass is like that nice, light, even brown, almost like this, right? But then it said burnt in a furnace. There's no getting around that. And it's his feet, of all things. You know, you can't hide that color. You know, you look under my shirt, it's a lot lighter than, my arms are, but the feet, they're going to show your melanin, you know, especially with they wearing sandals all the time. But this is just to show that, man, God, his image, wool, brown, his son's image, wool, brown. And guess what? In Genesis 1:27, it says that man, his children, the sons of God, were made in his image. So now when we look out in the world and we see who they call the so-called the sons of God, do we see that image? Do we, if you want to get spiritual, do we see the image of righteousness from them? Do we see woolly hair from them? Do we see brown skin from them? Right? So just like in First Maccabees, like they were seeing in their time, BC, we're seeing now in AD that whitewashing. All right? So let's talk about some of these books, right? I got a couple books here. You know, and the Dark Ages, it's 1,000 years of history. Go ahead and read off these books and just show them in the camera so people can understand.
We have Nature Knows No Color Lines by J.A. Rogers.
So that goes into a couple different things about how, wow, I didn't know these people were black. We're Negroes, so to speak. Black is a relatively new term, but not even really, but Negro means black. You understand? So, and we'll find that throughout history, throughout time, we've always been referred to as some form of black, dark. You understand? Moors, swarthy. You understand? Negroes.
All right, we have The Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, The Origins of American Racism by Ronald Sanders.
So all these are just good resources. I didn't want to, read you a whole essay today, but we're going to read a little bit.
This one is Christopher Columbus and the Participation of the Jews in the Spanish and Portuguese Discoveries by Mayer Kaiserling. The Negro Rulers of Scotland and the British Isles by Dr. John Johnson. I want to read that one. I lived in Scotland for a while, man.
Oh, word?
I enjoyed being there, man. With all the castles and cobblestone
I love
roads
castles
and stuff.
too, man. It kind of feel like home, did it? Did it feel like you
No,
deserve
I didn't.
it?
There were too many mites. Yeah.
Too many. Oh,
Too many. Here we go. Next one is From Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph Windsor.
That's the Israelite classic right there. You come right into the truth. That's one of the first ones you're going to get.
And the last one is In Search of the Dark Ages by Michael Wood.
So these other ones, they give you the color, right, in the Dark Ages. But this one gives you a good overview of what pretty much happened. And Brother said he want to get into this one, and we certainly will show you some of the black faces. But first, I'll give you that overview of key events in these Dark Ages, right? So you got basically the rise of Islam happening. You understand? 500 AD going into the 600s, the Prophet Muhammad comes on the scene, and the rise of Islam happens, and it's starting to spread throughout all Arabia and into the African continent. What you have is Islam spreading, and many great, powerful nations in Africa, they had a choice. They could convert to Islam or they could die. But, if they converted, that also promised them lots of wealth. So you got many of these African nations converting, and then they're becoming superpowers in a sense. And that's where the likes of the figure like Mansa Musa comes from. And his famous trip to Mecca, where he had so much money that he gave away so much money, it destroyed economies, right? But so that's the rise of Islam. That's how Islam spread. That's important to understand. Then you have about year 700 or so, you have the Moors coming from Africa around Morocco area, right into Spain, taking over Spain, creating the Al-Andalus. Now, a lot of them were Muslim, right? But you can even read how the Jews that were already residing in Spain, already being persecuted by the people there, when the Moors came in, the Jews and the Moors were just teamed up like that. They just automatically teamed up. They were like, oh, they coming, and then they started helping out. And then the Moors coexisted peacefully with the Jews after that. See, so that's a clue you might want to understand there, right? What else we have going on? You have the split of the church, in a sense. So especially with the fall of Rome happening, you have Catholicism coming on the scene, and you have Eastern Orthodox coming on the scene, right? So Rome split into basically two separate empires. You got the Holy Roman Empire, and then you have the Byzantine Empire. So the Holy Roman Empire is going to be, occupying that Germanic area, northern, Western Europe. You understand? The Byzantine Empire is going to, have what's called Anatolia, which is basically Greece and Turkey. All right? So you have that split, that schism, and the Byzantine Empire becomes a cultural center for the world. Its capital, Constantinople, is like the home of trade throughout the entire world at this point. It's got the Silk Road going from it to all the way to China, right? You've got the powerful kingdoms in Africa, even tapping into that through Egypt, and you have this mingling, this connection, and we're talking about the 800s right now, and the world is a very connected place. You've got, all of Arabia coming through Africa. You've got all of Africa going up into Europe, talking to some Chinese, you know what I'm saying? So discard this notion that, the races were separated from each other. You understand? You want to have the understanding that people were essentially everywhere, especially the Israelites, our people, who some were Moors. When you see Jews being referred to and being persecuted, that's going to be our people. You understand? So you just want to get that. What happens next? Couple things. You have a lot of war. This age, the Dark Ages, is characterized by war, especially as we get into the year 1000 and the 1200s. You have what's called the Crusades, which was great holy wars. So you see what happened. Islam became so strong, so powerful, so mighty. Well, many of the Catholics and people of the Christian faith, they didn't like that. They wanted Jerusalem back. Initiated great holy wars where everyone of their faith joined up to fight everyone of that faith. So that happened about then. You even have later in the 1300s, 1347, the Black Plague, right? Wipes out huge amount. It starts in China. And this is how the world. Ain't that funny? It started in China. I just realized that, bro. Why? Nothing new under the sun. History repeats itself. That's why it's important we understand, right? You've got a world-ending plague. You know where it's coming from. But yeah, so you got the Black Plague essentially starting in China, and that Silk Road providing that connection allowed it to transfer all the way where it devastated Europe, absolutely devastated. Then you kind of get into the 1400s. Everyone should know in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? But what's also interesting about that particular date is that the Moors were expelled from Spain. This was the beginning of the end, essentially, for the Negro rulers of Europe. Is that the Moors were essentially in Spain, were essentially the last stronghold of that, and they were getting pushed out. And then the Inquisitions happened, persecution of the Jews, and eventually you got the conquistas going into the Americas, slave trade happening, all that. So basically you got towards the end of the Renaissance, towards the beginning of the Renaissance. The word Renaissance means rebirth. Rebirth of what? White supremacy. Because another iconoclasm takes place. And iconoclasm took place around the Roman Empire times, where they changed the images. And now, after this dark age, an age where the darkies ruled, is another iconoclasm with the Renaissance, the rebirth of white supremacy, where people like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, I forget the other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles names, but they were hired to paint. Literally, they were renowned painters, and they were literally hired to paint over these images, like the Sistine Chapel. And I got a couple of books written down. You know, a lot of these you're going to want to look up on your own. It's so much you can see. We can only bring out a few here tonight, but I'll read them. I'll read some of these for you. You want to look up the art treasures of Russia, all right? The art treasures of Russia. And what you're going to find are Negro European artifacts. What does that mean? It means Europeans of African descent, essentially. And the artifacts that they had, what you're going to see with those artifacts is that, oh, these were rich, wealthy, affluent people. Because those were the only people who really had money to spend on the craftsmanship of these different types of things. Next, you're going to want the Russian icons, all right? The Russian icons have many of the images created around religion, all right, untouched in a sense. And what you're going to see is that, oh, these are black people, for sure, all right? Next book is there's an early Spanish manuscript illumination. If you can get your hands on that, you're going to see that, oh, when they wrote their Bible, they made sure to make all the characters brown, and that's in Spain, all right? But it's also during the time the Moors ruled. So you want images of the blacks in Western art as well. And I also showed you Babylon to Timbuktu, all right? So all of those things, all of those are images you can see about different colored people in Europe, the positions they held, the power they held, and even the office and all that. So that's just good for your mental. And the importance of all this is to understand that our history did not begin in American slavery. You understand? Our history stretches back farther than the Egyptians, right? The goal of this is to become reconnected with a pride and heritage within our people. So, but the sad thing is we always end up in these cursed conditions due to our own infighting, in a sense. You have Negro rulers in Europe. You have the rise of Islam and Moors making Islam famous, but guess what? Both got Israelites on both sides. Crusades had Israelites on both sides fighting against each other for what they thought was a righteous faith. You know? So let's get this. Negro rulers of Scotland and the British Isles. We're going to give you some names. I'm sure many of you guys are famous with, are familiar with King James, but he is not the only one. So we got a lot of names here. What sounds interesting to you? Let's get Robert the First. Let's get Robert the First. Page 44. Con. Go ahead. Yeah.
Robert the First, the Catholic Moorish Robert the First, better known as Robert the Bruce, A.D. 1306 through 1329, was the son of Robert the Bruce, Earl of Carrick, by right of his dark-skinned Pictish wife, Marjorie.
So what that means, so this guy, Robert the First, was a dark-skinned man. We're going to find that out. But his wife was a dark-skinned woman. And when it says he was ruling by her right, means that the inheritance of this kingdom actually passed to her. He married her, so he became ruler of it. But this just shows you, oh, black power couple. You know what I'm saying? She came from a noble line as well. All right?
The daughter of Neil, Niger or Nayal, meaning black, who was the son of Dancha, same as Duncan, meaning swarthy,
So
black.
you're also going to see, so it says Danchala or Duncan, meaning swarthy, that all these people are denoted by multiple different titles meaning black or dark skin. All right, so go ahead.
Meaning swarthy, black, or dark-skinned warrior. The Bruce dynasty was a direct descendant of David I, who was the youngest son of Malcolm III. King David I was the great grandnephew of Niger Kenneth Dub.
All right, that's good right here. And let's get a little bit about Marjorie, since she was mentioned as well. She's just right here. So get this first paragraph, and then get that last paragraph.
Marjorie, the Moorish Countess Marjorie, was a dark-skinned Pictish woman, the daughter of Neil, Niger, the Earl of Carrick, who was the son of Danchali, same as Duncan, meaning swarthy, black, or dark-skinned warrior. There were many black-skinned women mentioned in the Scottish annals. One was renowned warrior Black Agnes.
Agnes, yeah.
Black Agnes, who viciously fought the British at Dunbar. She was called black because of her black skin and other African features.
So even here, so that said the Scottish annals, right? Even when you go into like a historical text like that or review or whatever, they're also going to say stuff like, oh, they had African features or a likeness to these certain characteristics, and use all these words to try and dance around the fact, except saying, oh, these were black Africans. Why? Because of the whitewashing. After the Dark Ages ended, race as a concept, black versus white, took the forefront of issues and became this thing where if we're going to enslave these people and subjugate them and make them, you know, base creatures, we have to do everything we can to erase their glory, in a sense. So they'll never openly say, oh, this person was African descent, but they'll say they're like that or they resemble or something of that nature. All right. Another thing you'll see is that, well, some people will say they're the one black person in Europe. How are they? You know, they're probably not even black anymore, so to speak. Well, that's not true, because we can see here between Marjorie and Duncan, they were two blacks that married each other, and this was in about 1300s. This all stems from the Moors in Spain. All right, when they conquered, they brought so much art, science, and culture in, and then that spread throughout the rest of Europe, and all these black rulers start popping up, teaching the heathen how to bathe. It was actually a custom. They had customs against bathing in their society. So we had to teach them how to read, write, and bathe. We brought their literacy rate up. It was like a really almost creating these ideal societies in a sense. There's even an account, I believe it's in which book is it? It might be in this one. No, this one's one with Christopher Columbus. But it's an account there that talks about how the streets were so clean in Cordoba, which is in Spain, which was one of the Moorish strongholds. Streets were so clean that you couldn't find a speck of dirt on them. And that people were so clean that when they walked out, they were immediately taking a bath after. It was crazy the kind of reversal they did to these societies. And then they also established some of the first universities, and the rulers of those different European nations would send their children to that university and then send them out. So education, literacy, cleanliness, all that stuff, the arts, the sciences were going up. Let's keep reading. Let's read something else, just to get a few names in your. Let's see. Yeah, this is one thing I want to talk about, because there's way too many names, because you really got to read this stuff yourself. But I want to talk about European coat of arms as well, just to give you kind of further proof of our prevalence in these lands. It's page 153. So in European coats of arms, especially during the Middle Ages, but you could even find some today, you're going to see black faces on them. You're going to see caricatures of black heads on them. Why would they spend time, effort, and money on their royal symbol, their noble symbol that showcased their pedigree, by putting a black face on it? Well, because that's what showed nobility in that time, a black face. All right, so we got pictures of several coats of arms here, and these might just be things you have to look up. But God, I was trying to, yeah. So you can see how some of these literally depict black men and women. God, so just look up Moorish coats of arms Europe or black coats of arms Europe. Google images; it'll pop up a whole bunch for you. But this is just to show how throughout all of Europe, it was crazy how much black nobility there was.
Europe's coat of arms. The earliest symbols of the Payat, the Scottish tribes, Irish, British, German, Austrian, French, and the rest of Europe's coat of arms were originally images of the Negro Moorish race, an old African tradition that was practiced long before the emergence of the European white power. The earliest descriptions, insignias, and designs of Europe's coat of arms are still memorialized in every nation of the world, signifying lineage, accomplishment, or character of a person, family, organization, region, or state. The original names applied to Europe's coat of arms. They all Moors.
Yeah, read their names so they could hear how many had more in them, right?
The original names applied to Europe's coat of arms were Biggies, Moorhead, McMore, McMorry, O'Morey, O'More, Moore, Morrison, Blackmore, Moore, Mauer,
yeah.
Morphin, Morph, Leader, Moore, Black, Moore, Maury, Mari, Moore, Morgan, Bolin, Biggs, O'More.
Mm-hmm. So that was
Keep going.
It was a sign of nobility to be a Moor, to be dark skinned, because that was just the sign of the times. Something else I want to give for you is blacks in Scandinavia, the land of the Vikings. So also during this time, you have, along with all the war, Viking raids coming from the that northern land in a sense. So go ahead and read through this.
The stereotypical image of a Viking, thanks in part to the to depictions of them in popular culture is that they had white or light colored skin and blonde or sometimes brown hair. But did all the Vikings look like that? Were there any black Vikings who had brown skin? A small number of Vikings had black or brown skin, according to reliable historical evidence. For centuries, dark skinned people either willingly traveled to Scandinavia or were forcibly taken there as slaves. Over time, some assimilated with the Vikings through farming, marriage, combat, and other cultural factors.
Right? So you've got a plethora, because we're talking about a period where blacks ruled. And with the Moor conquest in 700 for Spain, this opened the floodgates, essentially. You essentially got Islam basically controlling the Mediterranean in a sense, and all those trade routes. And it was actually a famous kind of trade route, kind of for Varangians, which were Viking mercenaries, to come from Scandinavia, go through kind of the heartland of Europe on this little river passage, and right into the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. And it's also, people would go back and forth on that way as well. So this travel back and forth was always happening. And we're going to read down here a little bit. Because there's one Viking I want you to know about. And it's going to be the first king of Norway. All right. Start right there. Let me see if that's all I want. Yeah. Go ahead.
Harald Fairhair was the first king of all Norway. His father was Halfdan the Black, and two of his sons were likewise called Halfdan.
So, yeah, Halfdan the Black, all right? And the name it has in parentheses is Svarti. Svarti, all right? Now, that means black. Svarti, that was their, that's what he was known as. And what you notice, too, with that kind of accent you put on it, Svarti, it also sounds, it's a S-V-A-R-T-I, so do your best. But it also sounds like swarthy as well. So these were just common ways to identify people, all right?
And two of his sons were likewise called Halfdan. One nicknamed the White, Vinti, the other reminiscently the Black.
So he had two sons, one nicknamed Halfdan the White, one nicknamed Halfdan the Black, all right? So
some historians, like Jones, note that the moniker the Black may be a reference to hair color. While this may be particularly true, the implications likely refer to a person with a dark complexion as well.
right. So that's one thing they like to do is say, okay, whenever you see somebody referred to as black or swarthy or anything, it's they say they had black hair and maybe a dark, evil countenance. You understand? But you got some historians disagree and say, no, because of where we see swarthy applied to especially the Moors, and anybody with these Moorish titles in their name refer to skin texture.
It says, if the description exclusively referred to hair color alone, it may raise questions about the son nicknamed the White.
Right. So in general, you have two children, they're going to have the same hair color. You know what I'm saying? So how can you have one son named the White and one son named the Black if it's referencing hair color? So that's just what he's saying about that argument kind of falling apart for here. All right? So let's see. And then he gives another example going into that same argument, but that just shows you how the first king of Norway was black. Plenty of black Vikings to follow, all right? So, and Norway is in Scandinavia, just so you know. And then this article just goes into how people traveled back in those days, but I explained that. Con. So let's get this. Can you get Hosea 1 and 10? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Con.
1 and 10.
Con.
Hosea chapter 1, verse 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God.
All right, so we know that that latter part of that verse is referring to us in these last days. We've been told we're not the sons of God, and now we're being told we are. All praises. But right before that, it said Israel is as the sand of the sea. Can't be measured or numbered. We're all over the place, everywhere. This American slavery was not the first time we've been scattered to the four corners. You understand? So through various reasons, whether people per the law were cut off from Israel and had to go live somewhere else, or in one of our many captivities where we were taken somewhere else and some of us ended up staying there, we're all over the place. We're often travelers, merchants, and the like. So you've got Israelites all over the place throughout time, creating vast kingdoms, amassing wealth. So one thing I want to get into as well are the black tutors. So just give me 1 second. Now, the tutors were referenced essentially to blacks in Britain, all right? Con, here we are.
The black tutors.
So tutors as in Tudor, all right?
And I watched this on TV, but it's all Edomite.
It's all Edomites on TV?
Yeah,
Dang.
Here we go. The black tutors. Few eras in British history, if any, have garnered as much attention as the Tudors between 1485 and 1603. The monarchy was characterized by religious reforms, wars, and betrayals like none other, as depicted.
Real Game of Thrones stuff happening with them, you know.
As depicted in the popular Showtime series, The Tudor, among other films. What most people don't realize is that people of African descent were a part of the Tudor society, whereby they were accepted and given the same rights as anyone else.
You see that? No racial barriers. Back in these days, the only barriers were class barriers. Those were the real barriers. It wasn't until the Renaissance, really, that you have legit skin color barriers, all right? Con.
According to Miranda Kaufman, in the book Black Tudors, The Untold Story, they lived in a world where skin color was less important than religion, class, or talent. Before the English became heavily involved in the slave trade, and before they founded their first surviving colony in the Americas. Their stories challenged the traditional narrative that racial slavery was inevitable and that it was imported to colonial Virginia from Tudor England. They force us to re-examine the 17th century to find out what had caused perceptions to change so radically.
God. So, I'll read this one. One of the most mentioned black tutor was a man named John Blank. And if you look him up, you can find that he is in a tapestry here. It's hard to see, but you can see his skin color there in the tapestry. You see him right there. He was famous for his music, playing music. So he played for Henry VII and Henry VIII. All right, and in tapestry, in a real image, he's very visibly a black man, outfitted in the finest of garb, playing his music. All right, so you got this next one. There's this guy. Maybe you could show that picture. That's pretty big.
Saint Maurice, the Knight of the Holy Lance.
Saint Maurice, the Knight of the Holy. Yeah, there's too much exposure. It's all good. But Saint Maurice, the Knight of the Holy Lance. So go ahead and read a little bit about him.
Contrary to popular assumptions, Africans were a key part of Christianity in medieval history.
We're a key part of Christianity. Yeah.
From thriving African kingdoms, such as the Kingdom of Nubia, to iconic figures like Saint Maurice. Historical records of Saint Maurice, which means like a Moor,
Maurice, right?
in Latin, are mainly contained in writing by Bishop Eusebius
Eucharist of Lyon or
Eucharist
Leon.
of Leon, also known as Saint Mauritius. And he was admired for his exceptional character and faith. Saint Maurice is said to have been the commander of a Roman legion during the AD 300, with a contingent of around 6,600 Christian soldiers. When he was ordered by Emperor Maximian to suppress a Christian uprising, he refused to persecute fellow Christians, a noble act that cost him his life.
All right. And he was a local and national hero. And if we could show you the picture, the armor that he's depicted in is steel-plated armor with gold embroidery all over it, which is like, all right, gold is expensive today, you know. Got the gold head cap. It looks like a gold band with jewels coming out of it. Like, the man was balling. The man was balling. There were kings who couldn't get this kind of quality. And we're talking AD 300, so that's just crazy. Oh, that's another picture of him showing that. But yeah, so you could read that, and that's kind of what it's talking about.
The outfit donned by Saint Maurice is a testament to his status in medieval society. In both art pieces, he is wearing a suit of armor that denotes knighthood. The gold hues and headpiece also suggest that Saint Maurice was a high-ranking official at the time. For more of a presence of Africans in medieval and Renaissance Europe, check out this exhibition at the Walters Art Museum.
So the Walters Art Museum has some more of that, and a couple images for Saint Maurice, and you can see how dark he is, are from the Metropolitan Museum of Art as well. Now, this also goes into Sir Morian, who was the Black Knight at the Round Table a little bit. And there's a couple good things here, but let's move on. Talk a little bit about, because if you look up basically any European state, and you can find the black images there that have been hidden, that have been whitewashed. And what's interesting about that whitewashing to these images, a lot of times they miss something, like a small detail, or it's hard to dye those images in certain places properly. So you'll see in some of these exhibits where fingertips of white women and white men are black. Interesting. You'll see certain, under here, parts are discolored, and that's a sign for you to tell, oh, this image has been whitewashed. It has been literally whitewashed over to cover the original darker image. All right. So these are all things to understand and look out for. And this here is an article on Black Germany, but like I said, you look up anywhere and you can see the images surrounding them. All right, let's get some of these. So go ahead and talk about this.
Othello.
Mm-hmm.
The Moorish general from William Shakespeare's Othello may be one of the most famous depictions of black people in medieval European history. Though a fictional character, his story is based on Un Capitano Moro, a Moorish captain, by Italian writer Centanio, first published in 1565.
So 1565, that's the tail end of these Middle Ages. If you understand, in like 1492, basically the Moors are actually getting expelled from Spain, and they're already being persecuted. They had to flee to Portugal, and then they got kicked out of there. So this is already after that. But it just goes to show, like, we're talking about a period from 700 AD to the 1500s. That's 800 years. We're talking about black people from Africa ruling in these places, being a part of the culture, influencing them, literally bringing these people out of the dirt and the muck, right? So the perception of the Moors was actually very noble, very esteemed, almost superhero-like in a sense. And you can see that with Shakespeare's Othello. You know, it's like Othello was like a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Want to keep reading?
God.
To the next one. The Sibyl. Since ancient times, Sibyls were considered seers sent by God.
So like an oracle.
Priestesses foretelling the coming of great events. The motto of the Sibyl of Agrippina, one of the 12 that foretold the coming of Christ. Notice the flagellum, and crown of thrones, which are symbolic objects reminding the viewer of Christ's suffering.
So this is just another painting, and it's a painting of he said Sibyl, or an oracle, and we could read about oracles in the Bible, but why would they paint them as a brown woman? And it said, foretelling the coming of Christ. Who would know about that? The Jews, the Israelites. You understand? So they had understanding back then, essentially, who they were. They were in power, and they controlled the images that were produced, and they were doing constant reformations of Christianity and the like. All right? Let's skip that one. Skip that one. So these are what he's describing are all paintings, right? And these are paintings of black images of religious events, you know, pre-Renaissance era. So
An adoration of the Magi.
So the Magi, right, they came to Christ after he was born and presented him gifts. You understand? A little late baby shower.
Here is another iconic adoration scene. Following a star, three kings unite for a much anticipated meeting with baby Jesus. They lay before him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Wise men from the east. At this point, you will notice a trending theme in medieval paintings: religion. In this one, we see an African man as one of the wise men visiting a newborn Jesus Christ.
Right. So he said one of the trends was religion, but also in these trends is blacks and religion. And as being the caretakers or the ones performing the acts, you understand, the ministers. So, Khan, that was some of those. This is John Blank. We did St. Maurice. Excellent. Khan. So, that's what this lesson was about, to open your mind frame to understand that none of society was just all white. None of society was just, and they rarely even did anything of value besides wage war. What you're going to see as the deeper you look into history is that, okay, there were probably Israelites there that built the place up, all right? Because that's exactly what happened when we're talking about the Dark Ages in Europe. After the fall of Rome, Europe went into disarray. Why? Because it was cut off from much of that trade that came from the East. Even back then, you had an interconnected world where people were commingling all over the place. But with that fall of Rome, and they're getting cut off from the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, they lost so much that they fell into basically depravity, right? Now, when the Moors come in, they gift them the arts and the sciences and bring them up out of that. So that's what we got to understand about our history, all right? That we are a people of innovators, scientists, musicians, right? Arts, culture, all that. And we provide the world with it. And that's what we have done throughout basically all time. And we only fail at that when we turn wicked, when we walk away from the Most High God. So, anything you want to add, Ott?
No, sir, that was good.
So you got we gave you some books here for your own reading. We told you where you could find some images and hopefully get that whitewashing out of your mind, all right? Shalom.
Shalom, Israel.